But I'm happy to talk to you guys about early reading frequently asked questions. Just what is it that everybody wants to ask me and hasn't asked me yet? Or I've definitely been asked by many people these questions in person, probably more than online. I think you guys are scared to ask me questions, but I am a regular mom, regular teacher. I'm a dyslexia tutor. I really want to help you guys. So please send me the questions, especially if I haven't hit it yet. All right, so first question I get usually from parents of young children is, how early can I start teaching my child how to read? Today? Now? Why? They're alive, aren't they? They can breathe, they can listen and hear you. You can teach them how to read. I have actually heard of people who find different ways to build phonemic awareness for babies, for infants. Obviously, that's a lot of singing, just talking to children, modeling language, modeling prosody, which is the flow of language and speech. But there's also prosody, which is a flow of your speech while you read. And so when you're reading aloud to a baby, you are teaching them how to read. Even if they're like, I have no idea what's going on. When you're reading aloud to a baby and you're showing a real book instead of an ebook, they start familiarizing themselves with the parts of a book, which are things you do have to explicitly teach a child. So you can start teaching your child how to read now. I don't care how old they are, as long as they're alive. In your womb, people read to their child in utero. And again, the prosody is one of the big benefits of that. And of course, your child hearing your voice and learning that your voice is a place of safety. But seriously, when you want to be more intentional and build in phonics, which is the printed letter into the mix, right? And where they're really starting to make sense of those squiggly lines we call the alphabet, that is when you want to make sure that they have speech, that they can talk. For parents who are teaching early readers, unless you're getting trained in a very specialized way of teaching a child how to read who doesn't have speech, most of us can teach children how to read once they have speech, once they can communicate a few words, once they understand that the sounds coming out their mouth build up into words. And so what you're going to do for those very young people is never make it a lesson when it's really, really young, but make it joyful games and build up phonemic or sound awareness. I have a whole YouTube video where I talk about phonemic awareness and how important it is. So that's how early you can start teaching a child how to read. And it's never too late. I literally teach adults how to read. Teaching adults how to read, the hardest part, unfortunately, is the amount of anxiety they've built up around learning how to read. And so trusting their gut, trusting the process, not wanting to go back to what they've probably been doing for years, which is guessing. You can teach anyone how to read at any age. So don't not start because you think it's too early, and don't feel like it's too late for you to contribute to your child's reading skills. All right, so another question is, how long does it take? How long does it take? You've started teaching your child how to read, and there's variations of this question. How long does it take for them to learn all their alphabet sounds? How long does it take for their child to recognize all lowercase and capital letters? How long does it take for a child to master blending and putting the sounds together in a word? The reality is it takes years for children to learn how to read. And then if you think about a public school, it takes from kindergarten to second grade, where they're actually teaching foundational reading standards on purpose. They're doing it right. And then by third grade, they're teaching them how to use reading to teach them other subject matter and other ways of communicating. But at the same time, they're still teaching them how to read. They're still teaching them how to break down words if they're doing it right. They're teaching them about grammar, which is part of how you interpret a sentence, right? You can't just sound a whole bunch of sounds out. You need to know word structure and sentence structure. and paragraph structure, and all these things that we pull out of the meaning of a text when we look at it. When we look at magazines versus newspapers, you have to tell children the different formatting of different types of text matters and can convey different kinds of information. There's different styles of writing, right? Like poetry versus informational writing. And so these are all things we're going to keep teaching children, if we're doing it right, until they graduate from high school. And then there's probably some general education courses in some kind of English or literature or language-based something when they get to college, if they choose to do so. So what I'm saying, it takes a long time to teach people how to read, and it depends on what level of proficiency you want. It depends on so many factors, including the actual child, what's happening at home, what's happening at school, what's happening prior to them even coming to school or starting the homeschool journey. So how long does it take? Oh, and there's this one more feature of the question that I just want to be very clear about. And this is more for the children to understand, that there's a cycle of learning how to read that feels like the child's read success. That's when they learn all their alphabet, basic code sounds. They're learning to sound out consonant, vowel, consonant words and blend them into full words. Then you introduce a new group of sounds, or you introduce a new syllable pattern, and it feels like they're starting all over again. They're having to go back to sounding everything out when they thought they could start reading whole words because they built up fluency and comfort with those CVC words. So it feels like a roller coaster ride, honestly, teaching a child how to read, particularly for children who are very sensitive to getting things wrong or wanting to get things fast and not enjoying a long learning process, because it does take a while. I'm going to take a sip. Sorry, y'all. Okay, so how do you start teaching children how to read? First of all, actually, before I get to that, I'm going to give you the basics for teaching a child how to read, because that's usually what people ask me, especially when they're confused and they doubt that they can do this. So this is very beginner level information I'm about to give you. But before I say that, please remember that I have created a Teach Your Child to Read course. That's what it's called, for parents, that literally will take you less than 3 hours. I try to say you can do 3 loads of laundry, wash and dry cycle and fold, and listen and watch my videos. There's no homework. There, to be honest, is no actual day-to-day lesson plan. I give you guys action plans, meaning that you are basically equipped with teaching your child how to read in a playful way for young children that takes all the boring worksheets out of it and all the over planning. Honestly, if you have a lesson plan, you are over planning this joyful journey experience for an early reader. You want them to really enjoy the process and not feel like it's learning, that it's playful. And you do that by having an action plan, so you are not tied to these expectations of outcome, but that you're creating these reading habits in your child that will last them a lifetime. And so this is exactly, I'm a dyslexia tutor. I taught children as an elementary teacher. I've taught children in other countries how to read, in South Korea and China. And it doesn't really matter. It's all the same. I think that sometimes we just make it harder than it really needs to be. And for a classroom setting, you do need to keep in mind that there's children of different levels, and you do need a plan for that. But when you're homeschooling one child, or you're teaching 2 children and you know your children, you don't have to plan as many extra things to deal with what I call crowd control. Unfortunately, that is what a lot of lesson planning and planning of schooling can feel like. As a classroom teacher, I remember, is crowd control. How do I deal with, I'm working with this small group of students and these other group of students need to be kept busy or doing something academic, right? So I think the idea of lesson planning is not something that we need to own as parents or adopt or learn how to do. So my action plans, I think, make it super versatile. And there's 3 parts: a world of sound. So I really teach you about the nature of approaching teaching sounds in a really in-depth, really thoughtful way, but cutting out the stuff you don't need, the fluff. Blending with touch, because again, my target audience is parents of early readers, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, children who want to wiggle and roll on the floor and play with toys, right? So blending by touch really means they're literally blending with playing with toys. And then finally, spelling without handwriting, because those early ages, not all children really are equipped with the fine motor skills and gross motor skills to handwrite. Also, a lot of them lack interest, especially if you haven't engaged them in writing, drawing type of tasks prior to deciding to teach them to read. It can feel very foreign. And so you can still teach them to spell, which is absolutely a reinforcement of reading, without giving them an extra skill to learn, which is handwriting. So now that I feel like I've sold my course for you, the basics, which my course goes way beyond, is you're going to teach sounds, not letter names, okay? Letter names helps a child identify how to spell words to other people, but it will not help them sound things out. Letter names also can confuse children, and you'll hear more in my course, but I advise for the earliest readers, don't teach letter names at all initially. And then teach a small group of sounds at a time until they master it. And when I mean mastered, I mean you're not prompting them. If you're prompting them, they haven't figured it out. They need more time. Give them that time. Remember the 3 years in public schools? It might be longer, really. It might be shorter, but you don't want to put a time limit. I want my child to learn these 3 sounds by the end of the week, because that puts unreasonable expectations on yourself and your child. Daily practice. Daily is so much more effective than long practice. I think I actually put a reminder out today, one of my reminders. Don't forget that this is not as hard as we make it to be. And that also means it doesn't need to be a 15-minute lesson. It doesn't need to be a 10-minute lesson. Sometimes it doesn't even need to be a 5-minute lesson. If it's a really young kid, it might just be 2 minutes. And you can do it as frequently as you want throughout the day. You don't have to stick to this 8 to 3 school schedule of when you teach your children. I taught my child mainly how to read at bedtime, because that's when I had her full attention, and she had already ingrained this habit of talking about reading and words and books throughout her lifetime, because that was just our habit. So I hope that I've hit, honestly, the top 3 questions I get from parents of early readers, which is how early can I start? How long does it take? And how to get started. I have free resources, parents. If you cannot afford the course, check out my free resources. I also have an early reading roadmap that I am about to update. You can go ahead and purchase it right now. As soon as you get the update, I update it. I will email everyone that's already purchased it that there's an update. In the update, I'm creating a very quick guide on how to quickly assess where your child is as an early reader if you're not starting at scratch from the beginning, from ABC, AB sounds. Then I want people to be able to feel like they still can get value from that early reading roadmap if they've already started teaching alphabet sounds. But yeah, so I will finish that up probably today and update it by tomorrow. But the early reading roadmap is a more affordable source of getting started if you also are not a person who wants to listen to videos. It really is, I think, a valuable tool for parents to understand what the correct framework and methods are for teaching a child how to read. And you don't really need a curriculum. If you choose to eventually get a curriculum, you will deeply understand the science of reading research that has created these methods and this framework that I bring to parents. And I'm just excited to see so many parents really working hard on this and not waiting to send kids to school, teaching their children how to read.